The death of Chaucer in 1400 marks a significant point in English literature. His genius had towered over the age, and his loss was deeply felt. England entered a period of political and social upheaval, which is reflected in the literature of the time. The securely ordered world of the medieval mind, with its clear hierarchies and unquestioned beliefs, began to waver. The old certainties were no longer so certain. This shift is mirrored in the literature, which becomes more diverse and experimental. The old verse forms like the romance and the dream allegory continued, but they were often handled with less assurance, less conviction. New forms and modes of expression were sought as writers grappled with a changing world. The period is often seen as a decline from the heights of Chaucer's achievement. However, it is more accurate to see it as a time of transition, a bridge between the medieval and the Renaissance. The 15th century in England was a time of significant change. The 100 Years' War with France dragged on, punctuated by occasional victories, but ultimately ending in English defeat. The Black Death, which had ravaged Europe in the previous century, continued to cast a long shadow, leading to social and economic instability. The authority of the Church, once absolute, was being challenged. The rise of Lollardy, a religious reform movement led by John Wycliffe, questioned many of the Church's doctrines and practices. This questioning of authority extended to other areas of life as traditional social structures began to break down. Literature reflects these upheavals, often directly. The preoccupation with death and decay, a common theme in medieval literature, takes on a new urgency. The search for spiritual solace and certainty becomes more desperate. Despite the turbulence, the 15th century was also a time of intellectual and artistic ferment. The seeds of humanism, which would later blossom in the Renaissance, were being sown. One of the most enduring works of the post-Chaucerian period is Sir Thomas Malory's. Written while Malory was imprisoned, possibly for robbery, the book recounts the legends of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Malory's work captures the waning days of chivalry. The ideals of knightly honor and courtly love are still present, but they are tinged with a sense of melancholy and loss. Arthur's court, once the epitome of chivalry, is ultimately destroyed by internal conflicts and betrayals. Malory's prose, while based on earlier French and English sources, has a distinctive rhythm and cadence. He blends verse and prose, dialogue and narration, to create a work of great power and beauty. It is not simply a nostalgic look at a bygone era. It raises questions about the nature of heroism, the corrupting power of love, and the inevitability of fate. These themes resonate even today, making it a timeless classic. The introduction of printing to England by William Caxton in 1476 was a momentous event that revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge and ideas. Caxton's printing press made books more widely available, which had a profound impact on literacy and education. Caxton was not simply a printer, he was also an editor and translator. He recognized the importance of making literature accessible to a wider audience. He printed a wide range of works, from romances and poetry to religious texts and classical translations. Caxton's choices in what to print played a significant role in shaping the literary tastes of the time. He favored works that were entertaining and instructive, reflecting the growing interest in humanist ideas. The spread of printing was a key factor in the transition from the manuscript culture of the Middle Ages to the print culture of the Renaissance. It democratized knowledge, allowing more people to read and learn, which paved the way for the intellectual and cultural flowering of the Renaissance. Section 5. The flourishing of the lyric. Despite the social and political turmoil of the 15th century, lyric poetry flourished. Poets like John Lydgate and Thomas Hoccleve continued the Chaucerian tradition. writing elegant and sophisticated verse. Lydgate, a prolific writer, produced a vast body of work, including long poems like And. His poetry, while often didactic, displays a mastery of language and versification. Hoccleve, known for his autobiographical poem, wrote in a more personal and introspective vein. He explores themes of love, loss, and the search for spiritual meaning in a world that seemed increasingly uncertain. These poets, while not reaching the heights of Chaucer's genius, kept the flame of English poetry alive during a time of transition. They experimented with new forms and styles, laying the groundwork for the later flowering of poetry in the Renaissance. Section 6. Scottish Poetry, Henryson, Dunbar and Douglas. While English poetry was undergoing a period of transition, a remarkable flowering of poetry was taking place in Scotland. Poets like Robert Henryson, William Dunbar and Gavin Douglas produced works of great power, originality and linguistic inventiveness. Henryson, known for his poignant retelling of the fable of the, wrote with a combination of humour, pathos and moral seriousness. His work displays a deep understanding of human nature. Dunbar, perhaps the most brilliant poet of the age, wrote on a wide range of subjects, from courtly love to religious satire. His poetry is characterized by its energy, wit, and linguistic virtuosity. Douglas, in his translation of Virgil's, produced a landmark achievement in Scottish literature. His work not only made Virgil accessible to a Scottish audience, but also demonstrated the potential of the Scots language for epic poetry. These Scottish poets, writing in a language distinct from but related to English, made a significant contribution to the development of British literature. They demonstrated that great poetry could be written outside the traditional centres of literary production. Section 7. Prose writers Peacock, Fortescue and Malory. While poetry continued to flourish, prose also began to emerge as a literary medium in its own right. Writers like Reginald Peacock, Sir John Fortescue and Thomas Malory explored the possibilities of prose for expressing complex ideas and narratives. Peacock, a controversial theologian, wrote in defence of the Church against Lollard criticisms. His prose, while often dense and argumentative, displays a clarity and precision of thought. Fortescue, a legal scholar and Chief Justice of England, wrote about political theory. His most famous work argues for a constitutional monarchy. Malory, as we have seen, used prose to great effect in. His work demonstrated the potential of prose for epic storytelling. These writers helped to establish prose as a respectable literary medium. Their contributions paved the way for the great prose works of the Renaissance, such as the essays of Francis Bacon and the plays of William Shakespeare. Section 8. The makings of modern English. The 15th century was a time of significant linguistic change in England. The language of Chaucer was becoming increasingly difficult for ordinary people to understand. A new form of English based on the London dialect was emerging. This new form of English was influenced by a variety of factors, including the decline of French as the language of the court, the rise of literacy, and the spread of printing. It was a simpler, more direct language than Chaucer's English, and it was better suited to the needs of a changing society. The development of this new form of English was a gradual process. It was not until the late 16th century that it became the standard language of England. However, the seeds of modern English were sown in the 15th century. The emergence of modern English was a crucial factor in the development of English literature. It made it possible for writers to reach a wider audience, and it provided them with a more flexible and expressive language for their art. Section 9. Looking ahead. Seeds of the Renaissance. The post-Chaucerian period, despite its reputation as a time of decline, was a crucial transitional period in English literature. It witnessed a loosening of the hold of medieval conventions and the emergence of new forms and modes of expression. The seeds of humanism, with its emphasis on classical learning and individual potential, were being sown. The printing press, revolutionized the dissemination of knowledge and ideas. Writers began to explore the possibilities of prose as a literary medium. While the full flowering of the Renaissance would not occur in England until the 16th century, the groundwork was laid in the 15th. The post-Chaucerian period, far from being a barren wasteland, was a time of significant change and experimentation, a bridge between the medieval and the modern world. It was a time that set the stage for the extraordinary literary achievements of the English Renaissance.